Alright, here's a map of the 13 colonies as they looked on the eve of the American Revolution. You see here that this is all Indian territory. This is Spanish territory in yellow. Province of Quebec in Canada is up here. That's British territory. West and East Florida down here, and then obviously the 13 colonies. Most of the Revolutionary War would be fought in this area right here, the Mid-Atlantic and New England colonies. However, there would be some fighting down here in the south, but not very much. Most of the fighting would actually fought up here. The main cause for the war was tyranny. Tyranny of the English government led by King George III and Lord North. This is King George III, small picture, but some thought he was mad, but no one's actually sure about that. And now, as scientific investigation of his case is going on, they think it's just a mental illness. But still, you wouldn't want a king with a mental illness to be ruling a world, an empire that spreads all across the world. In fact, it was said then, and all the way up to World War II, the sun never sets on the British Empire, basically meaning it's daytime somewhere in the British Empire. Because even if it's nighttime in London, England, it'll be daytime in Delhi, India. So no matter where you are, the British Empire is probably somewhere near you. However, the American Revolution did much to destroy the British Empire in North America. Canada would still be a Commonwealth of Britain and still is very closely connected with Britain, but pretty soon Canada too would begin to slip from British authority. And so this guy is kind of people think he was kind of crazy, but he probably just had a mental illness. That's what the scientists are thinking nowadays. Anyway, you still don't want a king with mental illness ruling a world empire. And he really didn't rule it all by himself. There was the government, the Parliament, the House of Commons, and the House of Lords, and obviously Lord North, Prime Minister. There were really two incidents, both happening in Boston, that really sparked the war. One was in 1770, about 5 years before the war actually started, the Boston Massacre. Here the redcoats, or lobsterbacks as the colonists likes to call them, because of the red coats, which, trust me, wasn't exactly a smart decision. Of course, it was glorious and gleaming on the battlefields of Europe, where you just had a huge plain, a huge field, and soldiers would march and fire and stuff like that. But here in America, things were going totally different. If you've ever heard of guerrilla warfare, it's basically hit and run. People hiding in the woods, and suddenly they just ambush you, and then when you try and look to see who's there, they're gone. That's what the American colonists did. Woods, redcoats were not good in woods. Trust me. If you've ever, played hide and seek in the woods, and you have a red shirt on, or someone has a red shirt on, it's not good. You can see. You could see the British redcoats coming from a mile. So though it might have been, a very, very elegant uniform, it was a pretty stupid uniform, at least in the American colonies. So we have the redcoats here, and there was a bit of taunting going on here, and eventually the redcoats fired, and several colonists were killed, one of which was Crispus Attucks, an African-American man. No one's sure exactly why attention's drawn to him, but for some reason when people think of the Boston Massacre, they think of Crispus Attucks, so we're not sure why. The other incident happened in 1773, also in Boston. And you've probably heard of this one, the Boston Tea Party. So when American colonists dressed up as Native Americans and boarded English ships and hacked open tea cartons and threw them into the Boston Harbor. The British put a blockade on Boston Harbor because they said, hey, if we're going to send goods to Boston and they're going to dump out all our goods into the ocean, we're not going to send any more goods to them. So this was a huge financial disaster in England. All this tea, there was some major financial strategy behind this all. If you've ever heard, if you've ever experienced stuff with, stocks or whatever, there was probably some stocks involved in this tea here, and now I think a bunch of Englishmen were just watching their money float down Boston Harbor here, and so the English got pretty mad at that. But it was just colonists wanting to protest the Tax Act, which is basically a tax on tea. And tea was very popular in the colonies at that time, and so they couldn't afford to pay taxes on it. But so they threw all the tea into the ocean. And finally, British troops started coming into the colonies, and the colonists didn't like that at all. So they started gathering supplies and ammunition and guns. And we'll pick up as we left off in 1775 with a battle that will start because of this gathering of supplies called Lexington and Concord. So I hope you learned a bit about the causes of the American Revolution here, and I hope you found this informative.